Hello, everyone. My name is Mdu Ntuli. It is often said that the beauty of the unknown is often experienced by overcoming the known. In this short talk, I'll be talking about how we can imagine a free South African identity that is not hyphenated with racial and politicized labels. Also, I'll be talking about the fear that often keeps us stuck in the known and what happens when we overcome this fear through using a unified identity as a society. So I'll begin this talk with a question. Who do you think you are? Now really think about it. And I know that often this question is asked in a sinister manner when someone has done something that perhaps we feel is self-serving and we ask, well, who do you think you are? But in this talk, I'm really asking it as a simple and deep question. Who do you think you are? In 1994, an audacious project was begun in South Africa, spearheaded by a 75-year-old man who had spent the past 27 years of his life in prison. Around that time, the entire world was fascinated by the magic of Nelson Mandela and his vision to transform South Africa through this project dubbed the Rainbow Nation. While in prison for all of those years, he had found his freedom and wished to share it with his entire community and country. That is, to be free of a racialized and politicized identity and labels, and to simply be a South African. This indeed is an unknown identity in South Africa, then and now, and in fact all over the world. So the question really is it possible for us to accomplish this free identity? Is it worth it? Do we fear this free identity? What it might take away from us and what it might bring to us? Or do we simply fear it because it is unknown to us? In this short talk, I will be answering these questions, starting with the title of this talk. It begins by us imagining a free South African identity. I would like you to look at the collection of photos that is on the screen and try to pick out who is South African and who is not South African. As you examine the photos, you'll pick up that all of them could be South African. And in fact, all of them are South African. Now, I would like you to look at the list of identity traits that is on the screen at the moment and think which traits resonate with you and that you connect with to form your identity, and which would you eliminate? What would that identity look like with or without those traits? These are simple questions, but the answers are deep and complicated. And this exercise shows us how conditioned we are to think of one another as the other, and how any of these identity traits could be used and prioritized to divide us, and we become too precious about small differences and forget about the big similarities. So now, focusing a little bit deeper on this free identity, what would it mean? What would it look like, this unhyphenated free South African identity, economically, bureaucratically, constitutionally, and socially? Let us look at Rwanda as a case study of a country that has begun this process. In 2002 and 2008, Rwanda passed laws that prohibit divisionism and genocide ideology, respectively. These laws prohibit Rwandans from referring to themselves and other people as Hutu or Tutsi in public or influential statements. These, of course, Hutu and Tutsi, these were the labels that were racialized and politicized during the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, where Hutu extremists targeted and tried to completely kill off the Tutsi population, and in the process murdered close to 1 million people in a space of 3 months. But even during that genocide, there were some individuals who understood the power of a unified identity. The story of Damas Gasimba and Carl Wilkins exemplifies this. Carl Wilkins the director of the Rwandan Adventist Development and Relief Agency International, was the only American that chose to stay during that genocide. Damas Gasimba was the director of an orphanage in Kigali that had a capacity for 60 children, but was eventually sheltering 400 children and adults. When the militia, the Hutu militia, asked the children to split into two groups, Hutu and Tutsi, they refused because they did not know who was Hutu and who was Tutsi. Because Damas Gasimba had done something very smart and also very forward-thinking. He taught all of them that they are all Rwandans. So it was impossible for the militia to distinguish between them. This was incredible. So Carl Wilkins assisted Damas Gasimba to rescue the people in the orphanage. When the militias surrounded the orphanage and were prepared to attack and kill, Wilkins pleaded with the Rwandan prime minister at the time and persuaded him to intervene. The 400 people in the orphanage were evacuated and saved because of that unified identity. Also, in Rwanda, later on in the 2000s, the law of Umuganda was passed, which is a community cleanup held on the last Saturday of every month for 3 hours in the morning. It's one of the reasons that Rwanda is renowned in Africa for its cleanliness. In fact, it's the cleanest country in Africa. Now, I want to focus just a little bit on this law of Umuganda. Umuganda means coming together in common purpose and is not a volunteer project. It is a law that forces all Rwandans to participate in cleaning the country, as well as to promote the idea of a cohesive national identity through communal projects. In fact, police monitor the streets during Umuganda and can stop Rwandans who aren't participating and can make them clean up on the spot. Rwandans who don't participate in the cleanup can be fined 5,000 francs, which is nearly $6. And that's not a small amount, considering that the average income in the country is about $150 a month. So on the last Saturday in each month, traffic, including airport taxis, is stopped for 3 hours in the morning, and the entire country comes together to tidy up. Of course, some people, especially outsiders, say Umuganda is forced labor, which is imposed by a harsh regime that represses any dissident. However, most Rwandans participate and are happy and proud of the success that their country is experiencing. So in a country like Rwanda, there is one national identity that all citizens have learned to accept, and they think of one another with the same identity as Rwanda. So it is possible, even though at the beginning it was done by force through the law. So having spoken about Rwanda and seen the amazing results that they are experiencing in Rwanda, it is possible. But in many countries, it's not a law. It has to be done by choice. We have to choose to look beyond race, beyond class, beyond ethnicity, beyond health, beyond politics, and imagine the unknown. The systems of racism and bigotry in some countries are bursting with numerous protests and fights, and we don't know where this will end as well. But the unity we see in the protests around the world calling for justice against racism reminds all of us that we are more alike than we are different. And the only way forward from these racial tragedies and other tragedies is unity of all of us. Here in South Africa, we've done it before, and we can certainly do it again. Thank you for listening to my talk.